Welcome back to part 2 of this epic conversation about the myth behind staying together for the kids. Sky and Todd continue on from last week.
You know, there's a previous episode before where we've talked about the balance between sort of sitting there and being present and giving someone time to wake up to themselves. And there's another thing to go, I am needing to preserve my own peace.
That's it.
I get why someone would say that.
100%, because it's, you know, there's only so many times like a friend or anyone really can hear the same story and go, and then the friend go, you need to leave. Yeah. You need to get out. And then the person's like, oh no, it's okay. It's not that bad. Right.
I just had that conversation maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. To where, as you said, where they go, I need to preserve I need to preserve myself right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I was just that, amazing. I am an amazing human, but I was just that amazing human that would just still call it as it is and be like, and still be there, I'm like, Beach, you've got to do something. And, get the whole, oh no, I know. And I'm like, no, you have to do something. Until I got to a point where I ended up managing to flip the script. And I'm like, is this going to fucking change? And she was like, no. I'm like, well, then you have a decision to make. Mm-hmm. And it was she said it was in that time, and it was just like, that was the light bulb that went off for her.
So that story,
which is only like a small, like obviously I didn't go into
that's the quick version.
Yeah.
What you just described. So when you're telling someone, it's like they're laying it down. Anytime I hear someone that you are laying, this is what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like, and you know it's what you're dealing with, and they have the response, "Oh, I know."
Yeah.
You are dealing with someone who intellectually understands, but is emotionally disengaged because it's scary and daunting and hard. Yeah. At which point, that might be one of those signs where if you're that friend and you're trying to figure out where the line is between I've got to preserve my energy or I've got to care for my friend, as soon as they start saying, I know, to my mind, that is one of those signs to say they get it. They're just not doing anything about it. So me throwing energy and time and effort and sleep, assuming you're losing some about your friend who's in this kind of mess, is probably a sign to say, all right, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not going to invest as much energy anymore.
Yeah. So that's the no support. What others will think, and this is a big one, and this is why, like as I said, why I talk about this stuff, why I hit nerves, why I trigger people, why I do all this sort of stuff, because when we can shed light and open doors to those that were closed, more and more people will come out. But like more and more people will be able to go, hang on a minute, like I'm not alone, or I'm dealing with this too, or, and stuff like that and there is a mass majority, and I see it all over social media all the time, and it fucking does my brain in, where they were like, one, pick better people, two, what was the other one?
I mean, yes, but.
Yeah.
That it's like, thank you, Captain Obvious.
Yeah. Would you like a medal or a Mars bar? Like,
both.
So then that one is devalidating, and it's like that has that no support factor of like, well, you should have known better, or you should have done this, and like.
I have my opinions about the word should, but
we're not going to shoot ourselves to death. But like, and you should have known better is one of the things, is one, opposite thing that parents will say to their adult children when they fucking get out of horrible abusive relationships. One is like, what are you doing? You need, you should be back where you belong.
Yeah, should.
Again, with the whole should thing. The other thing is like, you should have known better. And it's like, bitch, I grew up watching you two abuse the absolute fucking shit out of each other. You didn't fucking leave because apparently you didn't know better, and I should have known better. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
I forget how many episodes ago it was, but that, as it plays out, is an example of the parent who didn't make the decision you made is recognizing that perhaps that's that proverbial mirror. It's like, oh, fuck, Sky did it. I better shame her into regretting that so that I don't feel bad about the decision that I didn't make. And this is where should comes from.
And we are raised by emotionally immature parents. Fantastic book.
Should, as far as I'm concerned, is someone else's agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's do you or don't you? Do you want to or not? As opposed to, oh, I should probably do this. Well, do you want to or not? Because should at that point isn't something that you're necessarily invested in. It's this concept that you're supposed to act a certain way regardless of how you will feel about the situation. And most people operate on should because they're either so disconnected from how they actually feel about it or they're scared to act on it.
Yeah.
And that's fair and reasonable. But again, I'd argue that's a level of projection from those parents. And, oh, you should have stayed or you should have known better. It's like...
Exactly. But and again, like a level of projection and shame and blame for the people that do that to other people. Like, you should have known better or you should have picked better people. Like, what's your story, mate? Like...
It was one of the things you said in the story you were telling about your friend previously about you could all see it happening, but there was this methodology by which he was progressively isolating her. So you have less and less touchstones to reality. You don't get to have that soundboarding of what your thoughts and feelings really are. And it's those ongoing should-ish conversations that kind of make you feel more inclined to be isolated, to think, to not say anything, to not do anything. It's like, oh, I should probably just tough it out because that's what mum did or whatever. And yeah, the vomit face, right? And it's that sort of like, oh, mum and dad didn't support. So you're like, you think you're still the only one.
Yeah.
And you don't know any other way to be. Because you're so focused on what you're dealing with that you don't have time. You don't have the cognitive space. And because of the fairly effective isolation tactics that kind of person would use, it's all shoulds.
Right.
And then your parents, if that's who they are, just kind of just nail that shit down.
Right.
Yeah. Gee, I wonder why people don't leave.
Yeah.
The stigma around mental health in general. You think you're the only one. You think you're the only one who can't hack it.
Yeah.
You think you're the only one who feels this way and that you're actually a kind of a piece of shit because it's your fault.
Apparently.
It's not, and you're not. But that's how it gets you. That's how they get you.
Yeah. And if you've got that conditioning or that, upbringing of that anyway, then again, it's Like I think I said it in the first couple of episodes, like that unconditional love is taught backwards. And
more shoulds.
Again, more shoulds, right? Like it's like I love this person unconditionally, even if he beats the absolute shit out of me.
I will get to that version of this.
Yeah.
And that's coming.
Fucking
yeah, anyway.
I thought I was going to be the fully emotional one on this episode. I'm like,
not cool.
I'm like, I've not seen you ramp up so much.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, and so when you're sort of taught that your job and your role is to make sure everyone else is okay at the expense of yourself, essentially parent each other, like one another, parents, you know, your siblings, all of those sort of things, then you move into a relationship where you are literally mimicking that exact thing. But again, like it's you're still trying to get your self emotional needs met. Something to be validated. Something that's like says that I made it because I stuck it out, or I made it because I'm in a relationship, or I
lived up to the shoulds.
Yeah, exactly. I lived up to the shoulds.
Oughts,
but you know,
have tos, probablys, musts, that stuff.
You know, and then like, what will people think? So this is an interesting one because any judgment that affects you only affects you if you believe it within yourself already.
There would be no chink in the armor for it to get in if that wasn't true.
Yeah. So if you're running around going, I don't know, I just don't want people to think poorly of me, have a look at how you're thinking about yourself. Because if you're thinking poorly about yourself, that is the only way that someone else thinking poorly about you is going to affect you.
The ability to frame that as a concept inherently means that you think poorly about yourself.
Right.
Because your concern is that other people are going to see that too. Ugh.
But again, that is self. I don't want other people to think poorly about me.
And giving away any kind of power you might have about self to anyone who says something shouldish.
Yeah.
Is that the new beige?
Yeah. We've got beige and we've got should.
Not a fan of should.
No, you should yourself to death. So, yeah, it's... Like, I think it's super interesting. Not this whole thing, but having...
It's interesting.
It's interesting. But, like, as I said at the start of this episode, on how a lot of people are, like, waking up and stuff like that. And not last year, the year before, I noticed this like, awakening where a lot of women, I don't know about men, you will have to feel that one.
It happens.
But a lot of women were going, I'm not doing this. And they were leaving abusive relationships. And like the caveat we said at the start of this episode, like abusive relationships, not just we're not going to have a conversation about boundaries.
He doesn't listen to me when I'm whinging about Karen at work.
Right.
Like that's not the same thing.
So all of these people are, you know, leaving abusive relationships, whether they're leaving with their kids or whether they don't have kids and they're single and all that sort of stuff. And obviously now then they've, you know, into the workforce, they're working, all of those sort of things, and they're, you know, being able to provide for themselves or in some way, you know, like they're doing it. And the interesting trend, and I'm noticing I'm putting my hand behind me because it's like in the past. The interesting I saw along this awakening was a whole bunch of unhealthy, wounded men who obviously, still no excuse, but we all run off our own conditioning until we change it, right? Who were throwing temper tantrums because all of a sudden they couldn't get into relationships because these people were working and they were being able to have their own money and all of that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, and I know, like, we've had this discussion before.
I'm
like, I can see you biting your fucking tongue really bad.
No,
there.
I'm waiting for you to finish because I'm about to say something along the lines of the more extreme versions of the red pill community.
Yeah.
This is exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, and they're throwing tantrums because they can't get anybody. Well, no shit, Sherlock, because they've all woken up and realised that they don't need to be financially dependent on your abusive fucking ass. And they're able to, you know, earn a living and pay bills and do all of that sort of stuff. You're refusing to do the work that needs to be done so you can fucking, you know, these people, as like we said before, they've transcended levels of energy. Your ass is still on the fucking ground throwing a temper tantrum like a toddler that just got his favourite lolly taken away.
Where's my favourite toy?
Where's my favourite toy?
Which is not a great way to frame it, but it's kind of how that mentality works.
It's true, right, though? So when, like, this happens and you go, so as I said, and this is the as you said, like that red pill fucking community that are like,
some parts of it is super valuable because it's an advocacy for men to step up and make themselves more valuable.
yeah,
But
as long as they're making themselves more valuable.
but that's the point.
Not
But
like,
you get the extremity of it, like every community.
yeah,
That's just saying, no, this is just what women should do. Yeah, more shoulds.
yeah,
And like just the delusion that they are this high value man and just should be bowed down to by women. It's like,
Right.
well, you're the reason why this woman does this thing
well,
that makes her unavailable to you.
it's essentially the reason why like a whole population of these women are doing this thing, you know, because this is not,
How accidental, right?
yeah, this is not like a one time every so often thing. This is like fucking all the way through. And like, as you said, they got away with it for however many years, however many generations, all of that sort of shit. They got away with it. Now all of a sudden they're not getting away with it and they're throwing a massive temper tantrum.
So the other side of this conversation, as much as we're talking about generally women sort of leaving and upgrading,
Yeah.
there's another aspect of that red pill community, and it looks like it's starting to spread across society in general, where there's a lot of men who, perfectly fine, reasonable men, are unplugging from dating because they see something going on the other side
Yeah.
that's becoming overcorrected as well. Like those single moms, for example, who they've got to get on with shit.
Yeah.
But then there's that sense of empowerment that woman has. But then there's the other side of the conversation of that, like women in general, where it's like there's that a level of entitlement. It's like, no, I deserve this, 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 and this. And these perfectly decent, reasonable guys can never live up to that because it's delusional. And they're like, I'm fucking out.
Yeah. I take it you've been on the receiving end of these delusions?
Oh, I've seen it.
Okay.
But that's even then that's the point. Is like, who are you dealing with?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when it would have been maybe 10, 15 minutes ago,
Yeah.
when you were sort of mentioning that, sometimes the parents say, oh, you should have known better.
Yeah.
I'm about to say not that dramatically different at the same thing, but if you aren't looking at who you're dealing with, man, woman, dog, fish, whatever you're into, and being present with who you are and what you're looking at, this stuff happens.
Yeah.
I know I went off on a tangent there, but
No, you did. But that's okay because it's a good tangent. Because you are right. Like there is, shit happening on both ends of the spectrum and on the scale.
don't say should. Just deal with who you are and the reality in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. There will be. I'm calling it. There will be a balancing of, at some point. There has to be.
just as a segue conversation.
Yeah.
Do you think that some of the motivation for staying is the recognition that some of these women might have is like, oh, I've got to go and invest in my own masculine as a single mum, and they either get a bit gun shy about that because as you quite rightly put, like these women leave that dude and they've got to get shit done.
They've got to get shit
with
done.
investing in your masculine.
Yeah.
Whereas one of the things that maybe makes that certain kind of woman shy away from pulling the trigger on it is, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't trust my masculine because, let's be honest, this is my version of masculinity that I keep picking. I don't want anything to fucking do with that.
Yeah.
They don't have good archetypes for what their own version of masculine could look like.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing because yes and no. And I say yes and no because personally I didn't realize I was in my own masculine until
You just did it.
I just did it, right?
Yeah.
It was just what I did. But on the flip side of that, it was what I did from 6. Like it was what I did.
It was just, you were built that way at that point.
Yeah, right. But I also know that even watching my mum and some of the things that she does and the behaviours and all that sort of stuff, the pendulum swung the whole ass fucking other direction. Like she, is like over there.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's
it makes sense because, being feminine didn't work.
So, yeah. So that's why I say yes or no, because I don't a lot of people aren't overly aware of energetic systems like that.
Look, the way I framed it,
Yeah, but I think it's more.
I doubt there's anyone sitting there and going, "Oh, do I want to spend time on my masculine?" Blah, blah, blah.
Do I really?
Who's thinking that when they're in the middle of that shit?
That shit, right? A lot of the times, though, I think what they are gun shy of, as you put it, is their belief that they can't do it alone.
That's kind of what I mean. Like until you're ready to invest in, it's the masculine fucking hold my beer, watch this.
Yeah. But on the flip side of that, they have this fear that they can't do it alone. They're doing it alone already. And they're already
and they're just wearing more weight than.
And they're wearing more weight. And, because of some archetype that says that the should word again, you should be doing this, or this is what you're worth, or whatever, it's not, beige, it's not going to get any better than this. Whatever the fucking case is, again, it still comes back to self. I fear this. I am not worth anything more. I have to deal. Self again, it's, it's.
Deal with yourself and the reality in front of you.
Yeah, so it's like everything, all of the reasoning around it, almost comes back to self.
In case you can't tell, guys, there's a bit of a theme coming up. As I said, that fear of pulling the trigger, but they're already doing it alone. They are so, and a lot of the feedback I get now, and these people are a little bit more in their masculine because I believe they have to go one way before refinding center again, and what I mean by that is, they've got to get shit done. Yeah, they've got to create the safety within themselves. They've got to provide for themselves. They've got to, they're going to have to do that. They've got to have to go back into self and, do all that sort of stuff. So they may be a little bit over in their masculine because at that point it's necessary, right? Until they can, come back to center again, whatever that center looks like for the person or for you or all of that sort of stuff. But a lot of the feedback I get when these people are in that is how much actual relief and how much easier it is. They have this fear that they can't do it by themselves, but when they actually are out there and they're doing it, there's so much less weight that they're carrying that they're like, oh, I am doing this by myself and it's easier. What?
And I don't have to deal with
There's less weight and they are literally getting stronger in front of their own eyes.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
Exactly.
It's like you don't realize how strong you are until you shrug off that way. It's like, holy shit, this is what it feels like. This is how strong I really am. And I'm stepping on and through and with it. It's metal. as much as we're talking about that, like I'm starting to think that the overcorrection is necessary no matter what you're healing from.
100%.
I wish I could say that it wasn't, that you could just heal just far enough.
Yeah.
But the necessity of the human psyche to want to know and need to know where the limitations are so that you can find that centered space.
Well, it's like what we talked about a couple of episodes or a few episodes ago when we were talking about, like, you know, that spark igniting of like that full-blown rage and anger and like burning down
necessity,
burning that old
healing.
Burning down that old scaffolding and stuff like that. It's a bit of an overcorrection, it's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but it's, as you said, it's fucking necessary, because it's like you need to burn down all of that shit to be able to move through it.
You've got to find out how strong you are before you have the confidence to become how soft you are.
Yes.
And vice versa. You've got to find out how soft you are to really appreciate how strong you are. And that's the conversation about masculine and feminine, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm trying to think.
What's the old quote? Sometimes you need to be a lion, sometimes.
Yeah.
So that the rest of the time you can be the lamb you are. And I would argue that ultimately that's kind of what shadow work's about. It's like you integrate those things of you to get shit done.
Yeah.
So that the rest of the time you can just be you.
Exactly.
The last topic.
The last topic?
On the list.
On the list. What's that?
The ability or the want to believe that there is love and abuse at the same time in the same place.
Cool bullshit. Again, that's the...
One word answer. Conditioning.
Well, that's what I mean. That's the whole, you know, unconditional love being taught backwards thing. You know, you were taught to love through abuse. Now, if you were abused as a child, if you grew up in an abusive household, if that's what you witnessed, you were taught to love through that. You were taught to love beyond that. You were taught, like, you know, and all this sort of stuff. And that that belief that love and abuse can happen in the same place is that's like culty, like
gaslighty.
Like
you belt the shit out of someone and then tell you love them. It's like, oh, okay, that makes it okay then,
right? Like,
and then that person believed that shit. Have I ever told you about? Apparently, there's a tribe in Kenya.
Yes, you were telling me about that.
Was this an on-air conversation?
No, it was an off-air conversation. It was one of the tangents we went on before our last episode.
Cool. Right. I don't know the name of the tribe. But what effectively happens in that tribe is that abuse is so constant and institutionalized that if a husband comes home and doesn't belt the shit out of his wife, she gets really upset, quite weepy and hysterical that he doesn't love her anymore. And the best I can say about it is that apparently that's a level of energetic exchange and input that in that circumstance for those women is how he shows his energetic orientation to the relationship.
You had to fight really hard for those words, didn't you?
Because I couldn't think of any less positive words to describe it about that shit.
It's not, well, that's not fucking positive, that's why.
But that's my point. It's like I'm trying to find a word that's just, I don't want to say a positive word for that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what's the most neutral word I can think of? It's like, the abuse is a form of energetic investment in his wife. And that's what she thrives on or is conditioned to want.
I would say conditioned. I wouldn't say thrive, but that's just what I think.
And I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I know when you told me that, I was just like jaw on the floor, like what the actual fuck. And whether that come from the tribes, whether that come from religion, where it fucking come from? Like, you know, the old, like, you know, Catholic schools and rulers and shit like that. That
what we were saying before about the mums who didn't leave, and then said you should have stayed. It's like, what happens if the older generation of women going, oh, if he doesn't hit you, he doesn't love you, and like regardless of the male participant in that, there's a well, I got the shit beaten out of me in the name of love. You can fucking cop it too, because I didn't get a reprieve.
And
it's
you're right.
Horrific,
and it's horrific, and you are right, because there is so many, you know, there are so many parents out there, like the, you know.
We gave a trigger warning, didn't we?
Well, right. Parents out there, you know, that have adult children. And these adult children, they do come and they go, you know, what I was exposed to, you know, fucking damaged me. And on top of, you know, the whole, well, I did the best I could, which is just like emotional manipulation, because it was just like, and then, you know, or you should have stayed, or you should have known better. On top of that as well, there's a whole bunch of, well, I had it worse. What are you complaining about?
I'd argue, like, what? Yeah, it's a generational thing. It's like, yeah, you should have seen what my dad did to me. You got off lucky. And you're like, okay, that's all right then.
Yeah, that makes it all right.
Oh, I only can't sit down for a week because I've got so much welts on my ass from getting a belting.
Right? Like, okay, cool. Yeah, it's like awesome. I had bruises across the front of my legs still, you know, and I thought that was fucking normal, to the point when people asked me what happened, I said I got belted. My parents belted me. And
mate, there are memes about this shit where people are saying, like, me, I described some sort of shit that happened in my childhood. Them, you were abused. And then your response is, I thought that was just how things work.
Right. So that's it. And it's just like, oh my God. So your rationale and your reasoning for, you know, not leaving an abusive ass relationship when your adult kids come back to you and go, why didn't you leave? We could obviously see that you weren't happy, was you know, because you didn't leave, this is what I'm now dealing with. You know, I'm now having to try and heal this shit that technically shouldn't even be mine. And your response is, I had it worse. Like, if it was that much worse, why didn't you leave?
So,
like, it's...
You hear people say things like, oh, first world problems, right?
Yeah.
As true as that is, it's still a problem that you got to deal with. Just because it's not having to walk 40 miles with a bucket of water to get fresh stuff and then walk home again.
Yeah.
Like, it's still a thing. So, like, using one or like an accentuating or minimizing version of, like, they went through what they went through. It's like conversations about PTSD. Like, you hear a few veterans who will say, mate, how do you get PTSD from that? You should have seen the shit I dealt with. And you're like,
oh, I've had that.
But the thing is, it's like, well, good, bad, right, wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, diagnosed with it. Just because it wasn't the version that you got to doesn't mean it's not there.
And it doesn't mean it's not valuable.
And sort of remembering and recognizing, just because, like, and that's why something said like that, it's like, I had it so much worse. Like, the reason why it's so offensive is because completely dismissing the experience of the person who's trying to have this conversation.
Yeah. But also, one, it's dismissive, and two, it's not taking accountability. It's again,
that's a whole new level.
It's again admitting that they knew that they shouldn't have even been there. They knew that it was unsafe. They knew they weren't doing the best they could. They knew that, and they hoped in my what I think is that they hoped that it would never come back to bite them on the ass. And when it comes back and goes, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, or, even literally, I don't understand why my kids don't talk to me. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you want to maybe think about that? Like, well, would you want to talk to you if you completely dismiss them, or, just not done? And then on top of that, and I know you want, you guys got that fucking weird thing. It's like, I want to talk, bitch. Let me talk.
No.
But on top of that, on top of the, deflection, the not taking accountability, and the complete dismissal of the other person's experience by saying I had it way worse. Well, again, you chose, you had it way worse, but you didn't do anything about it. You didn't do any inner work. You didn't do any inner healing. You just projected it all out onto your children. And now you're trying to make excuses?
It is a perpetuation of victim mentality.
Mm.
You were a victim to them, the abuser, and now that someone is saying, why didn't you look after us? You are then further taking on that victim mentality. It's like, I didn't know any better, or I had it way worse.
Mm.
It's such a cheapening of yourself.
Well, that's
let alone who's bringing this stuff to you and going, why?
Yeah, you were basically, in a way, you're basically admitting that you knew that your job and your role as a parent was to ensure the safety of your children, and you didn't provide that. But you don't want to admit that.
This is what I mean by victim.
Yeah.
But it's weaponized victimhood. It's I was under so much of the partners, which may be true.
Yeah.
But then to not deal with it later.
Exactly.
Exactly. So hoping this doesn't come back to be a thing.
To be a thing. Hopefully they don't remember, or, or even the same thing when, again, I've had a lot of people, adults go back to their parents and go, this, and then they've gone, I don't remember it like that. You're making things up. Fucking what?
I had that conversation with my mum. Very different context about these.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure your mum's lovely.
She is. But the point was that it's still incumbent on you as the person who brings this shit to your parent to deal with it on the level of self.
Yeah.
I asked my mum some questions about how things were the way they were when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, what are you talking about? This is how it was. Because I went in prepared. I had some idea of what kind of answers I was going to get.
Yeah.
I said,
you're amazing analytical brain.
Sort of.
Yeah.
She said, this is how it was for us. At which point, it was no longer a thing that I was going to take personally anymore, because that was when I did practice forgiveness. Mum didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Dad didn't know any better. I can let that go as something that's that niggly little splinter that draws my focus away from I get to heal me now rather than try and blame someone else.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's, again, we go back to forgiveness. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
Is to be able to let that go so you can get on with being awesomer of you.
Yeah. Get out of the beige.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Stop dropping in shoulds. Oh, mum should have done this. She didn't know any better. Yeah. I'm going to get on with shit now.
Yeah. But I also think you have to go through that level of, that healing process, that anger, the resentment, the understanding, you move down the levels till you get to that forgiveness, let go place. Grief is in there because, I think also I know for myself and, a lot of people that I've spoken to as well, the grief that you feel because it lands
Of what could have been,
of
or
one
what you didn't get.
what you didn't get.
Yeah.
The grief of the mother that you never had.
I've had that conversation.
And
I've lost count.
And again, that's another thing. Don't fucking squash that with the whole, they did the best they could with the resources they had available. You're allowed to get angry. You're allowed to be pissed off. You're allowed to go, bitch, why the fuck didn't you do that? Why didn't you protect me? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You don't necessarily have to tell it to the person if you're emotionally immature, abusive parent, whatever the case may be.
You don't want to be dragged down to their level by being an abusive fucking child. As well.
Well, I don't even say it's abuse.
But it's a venting.
Yeah, it's
that doesn't necessarily solve anything.
No, that's right. Like if you're going to want to have get this stuff out, and you need to get this stuff out. Like it's not a case of a want. Like you need to get it out. You need to purge it out because that's how the process works. If you know you're not going to get a good reciprocation from the person,
No, perfectly appropriate word.
I know. I was just like, I did good there. Nailed it. From the person, don't.
That was an audible fist bump, by the way, guys.
But vent it out in another way, whether it's like, the symbolic of writing a letter and burning it, whether it's, like
journaling,
therapy. Fucking screaming it into a voice note in your phone, like
kick bags,
whatever the case may be. But go through that process so you can come out the other side. Because you're just going to sit.
If you don't process them, you stay present and overwhelmed by those emotions.
Yeah, and
there's no healing.
That's it. And a lot of the times as well, and I know, like as I said at the start of this episode, like this bit me in the ass pretty big, was I went through that healing process with the abuse that I copped, from my father. And as I said, like I'd listened to a podcast with this lovely psychologist, and she said a lot of the times when these situations like sort of separate, like the children will side with the parent that wasn't physically abusive and be like, okay, cool. I get it. He's an asshole. I agree. Like, and I'm just going to use dad here. Like dad was an absolute asshole, and they will almost band together. And then when you go through that process of healing that wound from the physical, more like abuse, and then you're left with that mother wound. You're left with that wound of, hang on a minute here, because you then wake up and realize that the person that was supposed to protect you, and I know for myself when I had my children, this was a massive, massive thing for me, was especially when I had my two little babies, and I was just like, I could not subject them to what I had gone through. And if I could not subject them to what I had gone through as a child, and I would do everything within my power to keep them safe, including sleeping in cars and all of that sort of stuff, why the fuck didn't mum keep me safe? Why didn't she do what she was supposed to do? And if you suppress that by, she did the best she could, she was a victim too. Yes, 100% she was. No one's fucking denying that fact. But if you don't allow yourself to go through that process of, anger, resentment, grief, all of the things as you go through that mother wound and, to let it go, you're going to sit in the same pit of anger and resentment that you were sitting in with the parent that did physically abuse you. You'll loop it. And I even think that a lot of the times as well, and I don't know if you have any experience on this one is harder. Because whether it's the physical aspect of it or whatever else, and you can go, okay, that guy beat the absolute shit out of me, and it was all that, all of that sort of stuff. But then when you go to the other side of it and you go, hang on a minute, this person who was supposed to love, nurture and protect me witnessed all of this and did nothing. Like, that hurt.
You can heal from bruises and wounds.
Mm.
And you can tell you've healed from it because you can see it.
Yeah.
If you're not sitting there invested in seeing the wounds that you have that you aren't so tangible, of course it's a loop.
Yeah.
Letting go of expectation around what you should have got but didn't get, I'd argue is one of the most effective ways to lance the proverbial boil that keeps that cycle, that loop going. Again, I've had several friends who have described this exact scenario to me. Like, they're still grieving of the relationship they wish they had with this parent, but just don't have. And it's almost not even that they're sitting with whatever abuse or just unpleasantness may or may not have come from that relationship to hurt their own feelings by forgetting that this is just not who they were. This is just not how things were. That just wasn't what happened. And then using that as the way in which you make your life richer on the other side of it by going, well, that's not what happened. This is what did happen. This is what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah.
Is it sit in that pit of resentment and despair and shoulds and beige and normalizing that?
Yeah.
Or is it, I choose not to give that to more people. I choose to give something else to myself first and foremost.
Yeah.
And this is where inner child wound healing really matters. That only happens when you give yourself the parenting that you wish you had when you were a kid.
All the things that you never got.
And you can do it. You got to show up for it. And that's, and like what you said, like the story you're telling with your friend, it's like, this is the choice you've got. If you do not make a decision, this is just how it is now. You get more anger, resentment, shoulds and beige.
Yeah.
It sounds shit.
It does, right?
How much fun are you having, really?
Really. And I think as well, like, and you hear it everywhere as well. It's just like, and again, you know, as you said, it's like that level of they know, you know, that they need to or anything else. But, you know, when they start saying, I know, that's when they start to dissociate a little bit. So you hear it all the time when they say, like, never ever stay in a relationship for the kids. And yeah, like I 100% agree. Never ever stay in a relationship that is not for you, for the kids, whether it is unhealthy, whether it's abusive, like whatever the case may be, because essentially you are teaching your children what relationships look like. And if you're not happy in a situation, you are teaching them that is what a relationship looks like. Now, I'm not saying that the minute you get slightly pissed off that you go, well, fuck you, I'm out, because, you know.
When we first started this podcast and I said, what is abuse really?
Yeah.
That's why I wanted that answered, because there's being pissed off and then there's being gaslit and belted.
Exactly.
Like,
You know,
it's extreme examples, but
yeah,
you know
one,
what I mean.
one like level to the other. So, you know, again, like when we've talked about like, you know, what are your non-negotiables? What are your boundaries? All of those sort of things. Because if you stay in a relationship for the kids and your reasoning is for the kids, as I said, like your reasoning is to do with fear. And whether it's fear of judgment, whether it's I don't know what I'm going to do, whether it's, you know, like sense of self, like you said.
Outsourcing of fear.
Yeah, just the outsourcing of it. It's not for the kids. It's
You can't be the mum, dad,
or the dad, yeah.
whatever that you want to be without caring about yourself.
Mm. Because then also like, and I'm going to say like, because I know that my parents stayed together for my brother and me, apparently. You know, that was the reasoning. That I know that, and I knew that long before I asked questions, right? I knew it long before. What a fucking burden to carry.
How did I know you were about to say that?
Like, what an absolute fucking
like,
burden I had to carry.
It was my fault that my mum and my dad were that way.
Yeah.
Again, I'll tell you a story about what my childhood was like one day. But I get it. It's like, I think at least superficially, the I stayed for the kids is supposed to be placatory in that you were so important. I was prepared to put up with this shit because I was trying to do the right thing by you guys.
Mm.
The irony is that it's especially to the kid who's already like, what the fuck? It's never, it's rarely heard that way.
Yeah.
That it is just a bit, it's like, it's my fault you were subjected to that shit?
Mm.
Fuck.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so if at any point that your mind ever goes to, I need to stay for the kids, that's a pretty big like red flag to say for yourself to say you need to like exit left.
Like pull that apart.
Yeah. Pull it apart. Why are you saying that? You know, what part of you, you know, because obviously everyone's situation is different. But yeah, the minute you say, I need to stay for the kids, I need to just hold out and because this is another thing I've heard as well. Like I've had people say, I held out until they was 16. Why? Oh, because, you know, like they're a bit older and stuff like that. And I'm like, you realize, like, I'm like, obviously they don't, but all of the conditioning is done between the ages of 7 and 12.
I would have said a little bit earlier, but I know what you mean.
Roughly.
Yeah.
You know, like 6, 7, you know. It's
the ages where you absorb everything,
Yeah.
but you're not sophisticated enough to go, what's up with that prick?
Yeah, exactly.
What's up with her?
It's like from about 14, I think it is, that's when sense of self. That's what I'm looking for. Sense of self comes through and you start questioning things and all of that sort of stuff, depending on your environment. But yeah, so your imprint stage is essentially like between 6 and 7 starting all the way up until about, 12-ish. And you're saying you held on until they were 16. They have got all of that unhappiness. They have got all of that resentment. They've got all of that anger. They've got all of that emotional neglect because obviously you're so angry and resentful and all that sort of stuff. You can't give your kids what they need because you're so, focused on...
Then and now.
Yeah, then and now because you're so focused on just got to get through it, just got to get through it, just got to get through it until they're 16 that, like, it's too late by then. Like... You now that 16-year-old now has to, if they choose to, has to unlearn all of that and relearn something else. All
right. It's it's never too late.
No, it's not too late. But
But
yeah.
the burden of responsibility shifts from you to them.
Exactly.
And if you're fine with that, we'll stay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty categorical.
But it's true, you know, because it's just like, well, yeah, you know, they're self-sufficient or whatever else, like whatever the case may be. So if you're in a space where you're like, I need to stay for the kids, or I know I shouldn't put up with this, but I feel like I have to for the kids, like that should send alarm bells off straight away. Because at the end of the day, and I can never remember if I've said this on air or off air, like one burden, like what burden how are you putting on your children? Because you may not say these things, but they fucking know. Like they can sense, they know. Like as I said, they're being conditioned to act, be and do a certain way in order to gain like, love and acceptance from the parents, in order not to rock the boat, in order to, you know, whatever the case may be. So they're carrying that burden.
In case of matters, that thing you just described happens anyway.
Yeah.
It's just the relationship. What do you want them to learn?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
carry forward?
Yeah, no.
But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Great. Pick up there. Yeah. So what do you want them to learn and carry through? So are you wanting them to carry the burden or even like it's a horrible question to ask, but I find
it's what we're here for.
I know, but I find it's one that really like, you know, drills it down. If you had a daughter and when she grew up, she was in and she got her first boyfriend, whatever the case may be, or second or third, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Her long-term relationship was exactly the same as yours was. Are you okay with that? And vice versa for like boys and men and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if the answer is no, you need to change.
Have a think. You know when dads have the talk with their daughter?
I never got a talk. What talk?
You would have seen it in movies all the time. So
Yeah.
if he does this, he's going to meet me the first, because, I'm going to lay down the ground rules and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah, come to the door with a shotgun and whatever the case may be.
It's like back by 10
Yeah.
or things go south.
Yep.
And then if anyone asks him, why is that? And he says something along the lines of, I know what guys are like.
It's because he was one of them and he is one of them.
That's not quite where I was going. Yeah, you bully.
But it's true.
But there's a reason why he's saying that. And it's not until it's his daughter that maybe he's taking that behavior seriously.
Yeah, all of a sudden it becomes a problem. It's like, cool, you just beat the absolute fucking shit out of your wife for how many years? And all of a sudden your daughter brings home this douchebag who's like, looks like he's clipped her around and you wanna shoot him now? Like,
Yeah.
Like fucking same thing, dude. Like
Mirror, right?
mirror. If you're not okay with it happening to your daughter, why the fuck are you doing it to your partner? And I know that's probably going to lead into our next episode.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Because, look, it's a hell of a question, isn't it? Because, if I was the father of a daughter and I hadn't done everything I could to raise her to value herself, if that's who she happened to be dating, I'd still want to kick the shit out of him. But I'd still have to have a good hard look at going like, what archetype have I given my daughter? That's the thing that she wants to do. Or the other side of it as well is like, if my son started dating a girl who was a manipulative, gold-digging bitch, it's like, what kind of fucking simp am I in my relationship that that's what he thinks that he wants to be with?
And also, like, on the flip side of that, because, you know, like, I have 2 boys and stuff, but yeah, if my sons grow up and, you know, go out and do horrible things to other women.
I don't think you're going to have that problem.
I know. I 100% won't be having that
I've
problem.
met his mum. I've met their mum. I've met their dad.
But
Don't think this would be a conversation.
Yeah. But yeah, same thing. Like, what the fuck did I do? Like, you know, how did I, you know, how did I
All right.
make this okay or whatever else? Which is super funny because, like, when I've got a 7 and a 9-year-old, and as especially my 7-year-olds, they like to complain about doing chores, and I'm pretty blunt with my children, like, as well.
This is what it looks like, bro.
And I remember my 7-year-old going, "Mum, why do I have to clean?" I'm like, well, because when you grow up, mate, and when you have a wife of your own, if that's what you choose to do, you are not leaving her to be doing everything all by herself. You are a team player here. We work together as a team in this house.
What happens if you just live by yourself?
You know,
just this cesspool of Lego and Pokemon cards.
You know, my 7-year-old.
I've met him once or twice.
Yeah,
contributed to that.
Exactly,
Pokemon
and that's
card
what I
fight.
said as well. I was like, mate, you've got to learn how to, like, look after yourself. You've got to learn how to, you know,
Is he functioning as an adult?
you know, be able to live as an adult, like.
So,
You know, and I'm definitely not, you know, that whole, like, mama's boy where I do absolutely and utterly everything to they get into.
I've met that kid.
Yeah,
It's
they
offensive.
go into a relationship and they're essentially a child because they don't know how to do anything. And I'm like, no, we're not having that.
Yeah, look, that is a whole new episode.
Yeah.
There was a speech based on some sort of what looks to be relatively. I'm about to talk about psychological sciences.
Okay.
That there's not a whole lot of, like, definitiveness about it. It's theories.
Yeah.
Seems to be some consistent theories, but it's not the science that we wish it was.
Uh-huh.
But it was a guy basically talking about how get it out of your head as a parent that you can influence and mold your child's personality and psyche to the point where you can dictate what kind of person they are to them.
Yeah, no, they need to be their own person.
It's not even need to be.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
But the more you try and combat that and try and influence who they are, who they're becoming, what that looks like, the more you make yourself look like a dickhead and the less value your influence actually has. It's like dictatorship at that point.
Yeah.
It's like, how many people actually enjoy being in a dictatorship? Or do they get a little resentful?
Just a
That. So the analogy he was trying to describe is like you as an average human being that is born and alive
Yeah.
has 400-ish personality traits, roughly. Pretending like you can, for the next 18 years, cut stuff out, plug stuff in, think that you can rub this out to, like, pencil that in. Like, it doesn't work like that. The best you have, and kind of to what you said before, the best you can do is shepherd. You guide them.
Yeah.
You try and allow them to become the best version of themselves. We were talking about the expectations that we have of what kind of parents we had.
Yeah.
This is true of kids too. Like, what kind of kid do you expect to have? Oh, he's going to be a Harvard graduate who joins John Hopkins as a heart surgeon and then becomes an astronaut because they got bored. Oh, and then joins the SEALs. There's actually a dude who did that.
I got
How
bored.
many lifetimes would you need to do that? And this dude did it before he turned 40.
Fuck.
Anyway, not the point.
Yeah, my brain.
But that as an example of, like, dealing with you and the person in front of you as opposed to what you expect them to be and what archetypes that you have subconsciously planned out because this is what your dad was like and this is what you're looking for in a partner. or what your mum was like, and this is how you think you need to be, or what you look for in a partner, or whatever version it is.
Yeah.
I know we've said it many times before, but it's like it's a you thing.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily be your fault, but your life is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then what lessons you want to pass down, how you shepherd yourself, your inner child, let alone your own fucking kids.
That's on you.
It's you.
Yeah, that's it.
If you're lucky, you won't do enough damage that your kids can't figure this shit out and sort of undo the things that you've inadvertently done. Because you're just gonna.
Yeah. Well, we all make mistakes, and I think that's part of it as well. And like I know for me, and I can't speak for anyone else, but I know for me, like I have one thing that I want for my children, and that is to be better than me. And like not in an egotistical sense, but I want them to do whatever they want to do with their lives, and I want them to grow, and I want them to evolve, and I want them to like take that next step. I don't want them to, feel like they have to be an astronaut because that's what successful people do, or anything like that. I just want them to be better, and
as long as you are clear on what better means as a qualitative conversation as opposed to no, you have to make way more money than I did, kid, because I've got no money for retirement, so that's on you.
No, not
but
that.
You know
at
what
all.
I mean,
but,
right?
Yeah,
like, that's an
mean.
extreme example.
Exactly, but no, I just want them to be better. And I know for myself, because I am a human being and human beings make mistakes, and I always apologize for my mistakes. But I made a promise to myself, and I also, I said this to my husband as well. I said, when my kids come to me, if they come to me, and I hope they do come to me, when they're adults, and be like, Mum, when I was this age and this happened, what
happened there?
Yeah, it left this trauma, and I'm like, I am sorry. And to take accountability, apologize, and go, what can we do to fix it?
Yeah. This is what I tried to do.
Yeah.
This is clearly how it was interpreted.
Yeah.
How do we work with that?
That's it. What do we do now? How do we fix this?
Yeah.
Rather than I did the best I could. Rather than I had it worse. So what
you're
do you
allowed to say I did the best I could.
Yeah.
As long as it's got those other things around it.
Yeah. I'm
sorry, I didn't know it would affect you this way. There's literally a book, I forget the author, but it's called They Fuck You Up. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's you could have the best of intentions, but you never really know how your best intentions interact with that one personality trait that, for rightly or wrongly interpreted reasons, doesn't take it that well.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're a crack addict. That's an extreme example, but you know what I mean. It's you never really know, which is why sort of dropping a few of the expectations and shoulds.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a whole separate human. And it's not a particularly predictable thing.
No.
Acting like it
always ends up backfiring.
Again, you just look like a bit of a goose.
Again, shooting yourself.
And unfortunately, that's usually the person you look like the biggest goose in front of is your kids.
Yeah.
Which is why it's awkward to hear that I did the best I could. It's it's orcs.
Good chat. I'm exiting left.
Yeah. I'm over it.
Yeah. If that's all you've got, then I'm out.
Yeah. If you're lucky, maybe your kid's a dramatically better communicator than you. And if you don't know how to communicate it, then maybe they can communicate. It's if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe they've done enough healing that they can come back and attempt to help you heal yourself.
If you're open to it.
If there is no obligation, because as you said, unconditional love taught backwards.
Yeah.
You don't have to do shit.
No.
If you want to. If you can appreciate that maybe there is something you can offer that person who birthed you or contributed to birthing you. so that it's not just breaking the curse, it's healing that line down and up.
Exactly.
Like, that's not a burden anyone has to take on.
No.
But maybe you can.
Mm.
How much better is that relationship for that parent and their grandkids going to be?
Fucking 100 times better.
What kind of relationship, having done that for those two generations, going to be if and when you have grandkids too?
Mm.
What do you want to pay forward?
That.
Is that a good place to stop for today?
I think that's a good place to stop. And I think we'll dive in next episode with why the fuck do these people do these things? Like, on the other side of it.
That's like 100 episodes worth of question. I'm glad you're always focused on the longevity of the content.
Oh, totally. Totally.
player.
Right? Team player. Always. Alrighty. With that being said, be good.
Be kind.
Be your best self.
No bar fights.